This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley of Respectonomics, and I'm joined with my co-host, Sarah Benton. And what we're exploring this morning is an angle that we don't hear about very often, which is the benefits, the attractiveness, and the success of corporations. I'm emphasizing the success of corporations because, quite frankly, today's world, if we say two words, corporations, maybe business, but corporations particularly, and if we say capitalism, you always get the frown and the comments about how they need to do this, that, and the other. So the whole conversation today is to understand how does Respectonomics fit into the module of the corporation, recognizing its strengths and its weaknesses. But I want to emphasize the strengths particularly, and we can talk about the weaknesses. I'm not going to hide those, but I think the strengths are important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a great topic for conversation for sure. So I think to start, Jeremy, what I would like to ask you is how have corporations shaped economic prosperity? So a good place might be is if you could share with us a brief historical context of what business information or business formation is.
Well, business formation is in fact totally analogous with the human experience because we talk about family formation. So you talk about, classically, we used to talk about the mum, the dad, the children, the grandparents and so on. But that was all part of a formation that brought people together. And it did so for purposes of protection. It did so for purposes of advancement, collaboration, diversification, different strengths, weaknesses, and so on. The family formation, I think most people would agree, is in and of itself is a good idea.
Right,
bringing together people.
Yes.
Yeah. We've changed a little bit about how the conjugal relationship is set up, but that's not what I'm talking about. Talking about literally just people forming together. And a corporation is the same. And the difference is, and where the sort of dividing line occurred, was back in the 1800s. And they formed what was called a joint stock company. I'm sure you're familiar with that expression.
Yes, we are. But if you would like to elaborate, that would be lovely.
Well, I'm not going to go into too much technical legal detail, but, and remember what George Bernard Shaw said, anything that precedes the word but is a lie. So, yeah, exactly. So here I am telling the truth. And the truth is that the corporation was designed to be a process by which, transactionally, by which money, capital, machinery, equipment, services could all be brought under one heading, one organization. Mm-hmm. So far, so good. But the distinction is that a corporation is an entity that is eternal. It doesn't have a dead date, if you will. It has a birth mm-hmm. date, but not a dead date. And the key to a corporation is the original Articles of Incorporation made it clear that whatever money, let's say, you put into that investment. So supposing you were building a bakery. So you built the bakery. And you are the shareholder of the Toronto Bakery Corporation. That's who you are.
Okay.
Your liability is limited only to whatever money you put in. That's why you see the expression such and such company limited. It means with limited liability.
With limitations, yes.
Yeah, and well, the limitation is on the financial liability. Now, that doesn't take the corporation off the hook. You can talk to tobacco companies about that. But if I invest in a tobacco company and the company goes, let's say, goes bankrupt, the extent of my liability is only what I have actually put in. They can't come after me for my house or my possessions, assets, whatever else. Hence the expression limited liability. Now, this presents a very interesting point. It does two things. With limited liability, it allows me then to take risks. Because if you think about it, what risks would I take if I thought I was going to be on the hook personally?
Exactly.
I mean,
you don't want the impact personally.
Exactly. I mean, you can see how I would want to sort of avoid that. So the actual construction of a corporation is brilliant because what it does is, aside from bringing together the raw ingredients of money, capital, plant, machinery, people, and all that, brings it all together. But the key is that corporation is now in a position to take risks. And if you think of it,
Mm.
some of the greatest inventions that have come our way have been the result of somebody taking a risk. They would try a
Exactly.
new light bulb, or they would try a new way of a steam engine, or whatever it might be. Risk is a very important part of the economic equation. Companies
Yes.
take risks. We tend to think of companies not taking risks because you think of somebody like, I don't know, McDonald's, for example. Well, they do take risks. If you notice, they bring out new lines of hamburgers,
New
it's got
products.
extra lettuce in it or whatever it's got in it. Still bad for you, I think, isn't it? McDonald's? Or
But
is it one of your favorites? But anyway, but no, seriously, I mean, companies do take chances, risks on. You think of a car when they come out with a new design, it is a risk. And they
yes.
will test market and they will talk to people and all the usual corporate stuff. But risk taking is part of the mix of a corporation, number one. But here's the thing. I've got a Socratic question for you this morning.
Okay.
Are you up and ready for Socrates, Diogenes, perhaps, Epicurus?
Possibly. We'll let you know.
Okay, juvenile, we can go across the map. Here's a point, though, that I think is underneath people's skin, and that is the corporate structure, legally, constitutionally, socially, any way you want to, what I call cut the
Point
people,
it, phrase it.
coin
Yes.
it, phrase it, has this ability of limiting liability. We agree on that.
Yes.
We understand that if the company misfires and does nasty things like pouring toxins into the Great Lakes, yeah, the company is held liable for that. But we're talking
Right.
about there again the individual liability. But here's my question. So Socrates 101. If in fact I am restricted as to the liability, to the risk that I as an investor have, owner have, yes,
Yes.
does it follow then that I should also be limited on how much money I can take out of the business?
Isn't that interesting?
And here's a little add-on to that. I was looking, as you know, we both look at each other's notes and prepare for this conversation. And I was looking up about the advantages of corporations. And one of the fascinating things is nowhere and I'm talking your Googles and Metas and all that stuff,
Yes.
nowhere could I find any reference to the benefits that have accrued from a corporation to society as a whole. They were all written from the standpoint of, as a corporation, you have access to the capital
Mm.
markets, you have employment
Right.
guidelines, etc., etc. All perfectly true.
Hmm.
But it missed this fundamental point of the benefit that a corporation as an entity affords a society. Number one.
And that's one of the reasons why we're speaking about it today.
Exactly. And number
Yes.
two, though, is this issue of what if you're minimizing the risk personally, does that put a limit on the maximum then capital, funds, money, whatever, emolument that you can
Yes.
take out of the business? I think it's an honest question that needs an honest answer.
Hmm.
And I think today's world, you've heard people talking about, I hate big business and I hate capitalism
Yes.
and all that. A lot of that stems not from the very nature of the beast itself. Like if you look at a lot of people would look at a gun and shudder. They couldn't
Right.
possibly, they would not be able to see the so-called brighter side of a gun. I'm not sure if there's a brighter side anyway, but
Right.
what I'm
Right.
getting at is they would have a great deal of difficulty not shuddering at it. The
Yes.
word
Yes.
corporation, I mean, I think we have to remember one thing, love it or leave it, its origin is Latin.
Right.
And I think you
Which we've
wanted to
talked
know
about
that.
before.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. But it is corpus, the body.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
human body replicates or at least the corporation actually represents or replicates what we do as humans. And I think one of the risks we've all become aware of is humans do some remarkably wonderful things. I mean, seriously, you think about the
We
way
do.
you raise your children and the way that you've got new science and new arts and new things coming along all the time. I mean, the human being is absolutely incredible. And I think that degree of incredibility should apply to the corporation. It's a body. It's made up of a body
Absolutely.
of bodies. So why
Yes.
shouldn't we see the same benefit? And of course, the truth is that human beings have a knack of abusing their basic privileges.
Right. Right. So on that note,
Hmm.
in terms of economic prosperity, how have corporations, in your opinion, impacted or influenced economic prosperity? If we're going to sort of swing to the side of, on the positive note,
Right,
the portions that you're not able to find the research on.
right. Well, I mean, to start with, one of my, I mean, you could never really prove this, but take an urban center like Toronto. You could say New York or
Right.
London, Paris, doesn't matter. But taking Toronto as an example, and that is in the space of 1 week or 5 business days, I reckon every inhabitant of Toronto could, in fact, buy a head of lettuce.
Okay.
If you think about it, how
Yes.
would you say, I'm going down to the stores to get, lettuce and milk? And you go
Okay.
in there practically with your eyes closed, and there it is, and it's all saran wrapped and every other kind of wrap, and it's so convenient. And you multiply that out. Corporations have done a stunningly good job of giving us an enormously complex array of goods and services. And you think about
Yeah.
when you go to work and you get onto the subway, the hydro is working, the roads are open, somebody has been clearing the snow somewhere or other. You get to the other destination, there's a snack bar where you can pick up a newspaper and a sandwich. I mean, you follow all of these intricacies through. They are all at the heart of themselves.
Right.
Generally speaking, they are an adventure in capitalism. Yeah,
And I
sorry,
think they're hidden. People don't
exactly.
think of all those
Yeah,
components that aid them in their day to day
yeah,
and make things
yeah,
convenient and accessible
right.
and easy and make their day go smoothly. People
Hmm.
forget to think about those things in the background, right?
Exactly.
From that perspective, in terms of their
Right.
advantage or their
Yeah. And
impact.
as you say that, and you talk about people's ability to not necessarily to ignore, but just to be, should we say, complacent about, not thinking about, not reflecting on
Yes,
all of these
right,
good things, that is at the heart of respectonomics, because respectonomics says, would you please look at restoring or restating the dignity of the human being?
right.
And
And
I
bringing
think
awareness, raising
bring
awareness.
awareness is I still think is the most important part, because awareness creates then in the individual the right to proceed or not as they wish,
Right,
not taking away from that. But if I'm
right.
aware of something going on, I need to take it as a responsibility. Do I raise the flag or
It
not?
provides an opportunity to think
Mhm.
about it, right?
Exactly. So
Yes.
awareness is huge, and I think we need to apply the same awareness into the corporate life. You and I both have either direct connections in the corporate world or where we know of people in the corporate world. And
Yes.
I'll tell you, if you don't tell me, for a lot of people, that corporate life is extremely difficult and extremely demanding. And
Yes. Agree.
the work that those individuals put in is incredible. Now, you tend to think of the work that you put in is the middle manager or the person at the counter. Well, no, it goes right up to the chair of the board. A lot
Right.
of people give their heart and soul. I mean, I'm not talking about the morality of this, but I'm talking about the reality that people
Right.
do give up a huge amount of themselves to their business. Uh,
Time away from family, time away
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
taking time for
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I remember when we got married and I was shifted off, if you can believe it from my accent, but shifted off to England, to London. So, I mean, yeah, they were looking for an Anglophile at the time. Not quite sure
I
what
see.
that
Okay.
meant. But anyway, so we were shunted back to I was shunted to, or what's the word, transferred to London, England. But why
Yes.
it's sort of interesting is we'd been married, I think, for maybe 2 weeks or whatever it was. Next thing I know, I'm on a flight to Venezuela, and the week after that to Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
I mean, all I'm pointing to is the demands that are put on people's lives, and we tend
Yes.
not to throw up our arms and say, "Aren't I wonderful?" As a matter of fact, we don't do that enough. I think a lot of
Right.
us would do very well to say, excuse me, but take a look at what I do and be proud of it
Yes.
instead of being
Yes.
suffocated. But the issue is, though, corporations are like fire. They are to be admired as much as they are to be not admired. They are to be
Yeah.
thought of as a brilliant servant and not necessarily a brilliant master. I think a lot
Right.
of people get upset with business today because it sounds like they are dominating the scene and they get their way on everything. The truth is, with all business enterprises, regardless of whether it's GM or Boeing, well, Boeing's a good example. Boeing is on the skids these days. They
Hmm.
got their quality control completely screwed up. And for the first time, people are saying to the airline, what kind of plane do you use? I mean, you never used to
Yes.
ask that.
Yes.
You used to get
Right.
on to a, Douglas something or other with a propeller and you never thought about it. Now you're getting onto a Boeing plane and saying, are you sure it's safe? Have you had it certified today?
Again, that awareness has been brought to the forefront, so it's making people
Exactly.
think, right?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
key.
So I think this conversation needs to be one not so much of pointing fingers. I think pointing fingers is something that you and I really don't want to do. I mean, in principle,
No,
respectonomics is not to do with a finger point. In fact, it's the other way around. Its
absolutely.
primary purpose or primary business is to honor other people's freedom of choice. From
Yes.
that then stems, let's have a look at what your choices are. Nothing wrong with
Yes,
that.
we're here
I
to
don't have
help
to
raise
agree with you.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
here to
back
help
into
raise
awareness.
awareness
Yeah.
and then also be able to contribute in terms of filling in what maybe some of those gaps or challenges are and help everybody navigate those,
Right.
right? Yes. Yeah.
That's very good HR English to say to what was that again? To navigate?
Navigate. Now you're going
Yeah.
to make me say it. Yes, to navigate to ensure
Mhm.
that everybody, everybody's coming together and we're bridging gaps is really what we're doing. We're looking at what the challenges are, identifying awareness, again, challenges,
Right.
and helping
And
organizations and individuals again navigate so
yeah,
that it's a harmonious relationship. Really, both can benefit each other. So
absolutely.
you're right. That is our goal and
No,
objective is not
right.
to kind of pinpoint or pull out one or the other. It's to
No,
help,
no.
right? Help
I mean,
repair the relationship.
at the heart of it, if you look at capitalism, and again, using your approach of awareness, your
Yes.
approach of what choices come out of it, and what can we do together,
Hmm.
you show me any small business that doesn't benefit from two or three people doing different things. One person
Yes.
drives the transport truck, somebody else does the baking, and somebody else does the marketing. They're all very
Right.
different. Within
Right.
Respectonomics itself, you and I know we've got different people doing different skills, different parts of the equation.
Yes.
It's very
Yes. Yeah.
healthy. So,
And different experiences bring
exactly.
value to the table,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, I think the whole concept of a business makes perfect sense. It's accorded us incredible prosperity. I mean, if you go out and get your car or buy a new car, you know as well as I do, the first thing you say is way too expensive.
Yes.
Okay. It's way too expensive. Now, let's do some examination and look under the hood. And I think I'm right in saying that in the average car today, there are 10,000 computers. I mean, they call them computers or
Sounds about right.
sensors. Yeah. But
Yes.
the key behind
Components.
all of this is the actual mechanical benefits in the case of the car are extraordinary. So, yes, it's
Hmm.
true that I'm paying three times more for a car than I did in the 1960s. I get that. But I would also put back to you and say I'm probably getting 30 times more value in terms of
Right.
what the car
Right.
can do. It might be in the mileage, it might be in the braking, it might be in the steering, it might be in the warning signals.
Hmm.
I mean, we're getting stuff that we couldn't even imagined.
Right.
I mean, do you
And
remember the
again,
day?
all little nuances as well that are making our lives easier. You
Yeah,
think of Bluetooth, you think
yeah,
of
right,
CarPlay, so you
yeah,
could, right? Just
yeah,
everything at your fingertips.
right. So I think that as you rightly point out, at your fingertips is one of the extraordinary accruals of today's
Hmm.
um, prosperity. I mean, if you think about
Right.
how
Right.
many things are at your fingertips, you want to arrange a flight to Curacao, well,
Hmm.
flick around on your iPhone and you'll find one. I
Right.
mean,
And several options at that.
and options at that, which again brings out a very important point because don't forget, big business is always heralded as being too big and blah, blah, blah. But it is also absolutely subject to the laws of nature. And the laws of
Yeah.
nature is you are, and I will always look for the best deal. Your
Right.
definition of the best deal may be different from mine. That's
Right.
part of our choice. But the
Right.
actual concept of saying who else flies to Curacao or who else flies to Paris, these are perfectly legitimate questions which corporately I am able to interface with, to connect with, which, I
Right.
mean, what was it, 50 years ago would have been unthinkable. So, I mean, we've got all these advantages. And again, I think corporations probably give up far more than they let on. You mentioned, for example, how people give up their family lives
Yes.
traveling around. You don't hear about that very much.
No.
As a matter of fact, you tend to hear the opposite of, they've been around the world for 200 days last year or something. And, it's a sort of sidebar comment. The
Right.
strains and the demands of doing that kind of thing are incredible.
What's funny, if you have a conversation with somebody, for example, just as an example,
Yeah.
that perhaps does not travel for their job,
Right.
and then you speak with somebody who is constantly, as you said, traveling for their
Yeah.
job. It's funny because I've had this conversation with several people before. Oh, you're so fortunate you get to go here, you get to go here, for your line of work. And inevitably, I would say 99% of the time, the response from that individual is, I'm constantly living out of a suitcase. I'm never home.
Exactly.
Right? So
Yeah.
we're again, and that
Yeah.
could be, the
Yeah.
takeaways that people
Yeah.
see something or perception
Right.
is maybe different than what they're experiencing
Right.
as well. So
Right.
um I think we've talked about this before, but in previous episodes, but what is the importance of governance frameworks in fostering transparency and behavior? So governance is key.
I think governance is key, and I'm going to go back a line with you, but something we have talked about is governance should be on the educational syllabus,
Hmm.
curriculum. What isn't syllabus a good old-fashioned word?
It is
Thank you.
curriculum. Yes,
Thank you. Thank
syllabus,
you.
curriculum.
But seriously, in my schooling and all that, other than hearing all of the colonial stuff in brackets, what people wanted you to hear,
Hmm.
but governance should be absolutely central to all of our educations.
Right.
Most people, it's a word that most people confuse with government, and of course, it's not the same at all.
Right.
So, but anyway, so good governance is very important, and I think corporations should take time out at their shareholders' meetings, for example, and to talk about their governance, to talk about where they believe it works and where they believe it hasn't worked, and
Hmm.
what they're doing about it. I think corporations, businesses, governments are notoriously bad at not talking about where they screwed up. And it's
Mm.
always somebody else's fault, or it was, out of their hands. It was a regulatory mishap. I mean, all of these things. I think a huge amount more would come out of an admission that something they tried didn't work.
Take ownership.
Yeah, that's all. Because
Right.
I think when you take ownership the way you've just said it, then you have a much better chance of having that sense of ownership of other
Hmm.
people's emotions, other people's attitudes, their livingness, and so on. I think where corporations, if they were listening to this now, and I hope they are, they're going to hear all these glossy things about what a great job a corporation does. But we also have to ask ourselves, for all the gloss, why is this body of criticism against big business? What is it
Mm.
that's at the center of it? And I think it comes to you, particularly, your word of awareness. And that
Hmm.
is, so many people in the organizational matrix are not actually appreciated, they're not recognized. And I mean, these aren't small potato sort of cocktail conversation
Yes. Yes.
comments.
Yeah.
These are very, very real issues that if you don't feel acknowledged, if you don't feel included, I mean, what is the inclusive movement all about? It's would you please include me?
Yes. Yeah.
Respectonomics says we are all included in the celebration of life. I mean, that's, we're all allowed to
Hmm.
participate. It's fantastic. But we also have to be able to recognize other people's needs, their concerns, their fears, and so on. And I think, and I'll put a very practical solution on the table because corporations listening to this will say, yeah, sounds good. What do we do? One of
Right.
the things we do is to have small groups. And a small group is made up of maybe 10 people, name your number, but that sort of thing. And it can be a range of people from the one who's polishing the doorknobs through to the chief financial officer.
Right.
Bring those people together and talk about the weather if you want. Talk about the latest innovation. Talk about, who brought out the latest dental floss. Talk about whatever you want. but get people communicating and talking. My experience, and you and I've shared on this many a time, I am amazed at the depth and the quality of information at all levels when people are given the opportunity to come forward with their ideas.
Yes. I mean, again, I think that formulates to a collaborative approach.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Because and also from a place of awareness. So for example, you look at different tiered or different levels of jobs, if you will,
Mm,
within an organization or a corporation. People doing one level of job may not actually realize or understand some of the complexities or what needs to happen in other levels and
absolutely.
likewise. So just having that open line of communication, again, that awareness
Hmm.
and the openness to
Hmm.
actually listen,
Hmm.
right? Because that's
Hmm.
the key
Yeah,
is providing one the like you say the format or the
right.
form in order to do that and then to actually take the time to listen, have compassion and empathy as well to what that individual is saying and sharing and the why, right?
And that is done through Stephen Covey's brilliant analysis that when you make a statement, I have to repeat it back to you to your satisfaction that I
Hmm.
understand what you've said.
Right.
I don't have to agree with it.
No, you're just restating so
And
that
so,
the
yeah,
person, individual, group
yeah,
feels as
yeah,
though they've been heard. So
exactly.
there was
Yeah,
an understanding. Okay, you heard
yeah,
me and you understand what I was trying to
right.
articulate.
Here's a
Yeah.
little bit of a giggle for you. One of the arts of listening is, and as you know so well, I am brilliant at listening. I'll try it again. I am
Yes,
brilliant at
you
listening,
are. Yes, you are.
meaning, in other words, I'm always stuff always rattling around in my head. But one of the most extraordinary things is this: when somebody says something, try it sometime and repeat back the last word they said.
Mm,
It can be in complete isolation. You can just say, and just say that because that was the last thing they said. And the look of consternation or amazement on that person's face, you actually heard what I said. Because most
yes,
people don't believe that anybody hears us. And they're right.
I would agree with that.
Hmm.
Yes, yes,
You know, so, but I think listening is very important. The awareness that you've been really emphasizing today, I think, is absolute. And I want to bring this down to something else, though. We are very big on what the business ought to be doing. We've heard that,
right,
and it's not what we're trying to do. But to the
right.
extent that there's a responsibility for a corporation or a business to be doing certain things, the employees, the staff, the members of that organization, they have an equivalency. They have a reciprocal responsibility to be
Yes,
able to reflect back to the corporation the same strengths that the corporation's giving them. And this is a magical formula because when the corporation treats you properly, you are more
yes.
likely to treat the corporation properly. And
Well,
when you
think
do,
that in employee engagement,
yeah,
right? Loyalty to a company, which we know is rare these days. I mean, it's a completely different world from
right,
a work perspective,
right,
but employee engagement, the ability to retain
yeah,
employees because they enjoy working there and again they like the reciprocal
right,
relationship, productivity, which
yeah.
then often will reflect back to the employees that have contributed. So you're absolutely right. It's not one or the other. It's in combination.
It is an absolute combination.
Yeah.
And I
Which
want to pick up, Sarah, on something you just said about this concept of productivity and innovation and
mhm,
loyalty and so on. This is one of the things whenever you buy anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you buy a dishwasher or a toothbrush, doesn't matter, but you always want to know what are the defining benefits of that particular
mm,
thing. So, for
product.
example, the classic is you go and buy the new car. And the first thing you say is, you don't even look at the color or anything. You say, what does this do that the one before didn't? You
Right.
want to know what the latest buzz bells and whistles are and so on. And what it amounts to is that sense of acquisitiveness, that sense of wanting something better, that is exactly the same theme through which the employee should be treated.
Right.
You treat them as somebody who is exciting, has got interests, and so on. A number of things will happen. The first one is your productivity rises.
Yes.
Secondly, you get innovation, new
Mm-hmm.
ideas. And then thirdly, you also get better employee retention.
Mm-hmm.
Employee disretention, whatever the word is, abandonment, is incredibly expensive, both
Yes.
in terms of what you lose and how to replace. I mean, I've
Right.
heard numbers like it's 6 times the original cost or something. And whatever it is, the point is, when we engage in this business of understanding and wanting to be close to that human being, so whether it's me to the director or the director to the floor polisher, wherever those connections are made, wherever, when you bring that to the table, when you bring that I am respecting and I'm dignifying you,
Mm-hmm.
that is when we will find that, what do you call it? Employee interaction? Is that what you call it? What do you
Engagement.
engagement? When you get
Yes.
employee engagement, that is when you are more likely to create an atmosphere of productivity, innovation, and retention.
Mm-hmm.
So from
And
a
if you,
corporate, sorry, just
yep,
last point. From a
yep,
corporate point of view, the benefits of doing this, first of all, they cost nothing, really. It's an
right,
attitude. You don't even have to write your corporate manual or anything. You just start paying a little more attention to other people. Ask them how their
right.
day is going. You know that one.
Yes,
So we
yes.
ask the people how their day is going, and if you can break bread with one or two people in your
Mm-hmm.
organization, that's extremely healthy. We
Mm-hmm.
learn more about each other over a bowl of soup than any other way.
Right.
So
I,
if, yeah,
sorry, I was going to say as well, kind of going back to what we talked at the beginning of the episode from a risk perspective or a fear, when you break that barrier and you're creating or fostering that environment, or we can call it culture,
mhm,
right?
yep,
That environment, I think that removes an element of fear that allows individuals within that organization or groups or teams within that organization. It removes that level of fear that brings forward ideas. And when you're taking risks, as you said earlier, when you take risks, those are opportunities for growth, for innovation, for change,
yeah.
right?
Well, you've hit on an enormously important point, and
Mm-hmm.
that is this whole business of removing fear.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of organizations today, and by the way, we tend to think of middle management. I can bet you any amount that the chair is frightened because he's frightened of his board or he's frightened of what the press is going to say.
Absolutely. It goes all the way up the
It's
chain.
awful. It's a
Yes.
terrible
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
fear is one of the classic ingredients that actually implodes our sense of potential.
Absolutely.
Every business, every individual has two things going for them. No matter who you are, myself included. Can you imagine this? That
Not at all.
here we go, here we go. Here's a little bit of humility. I have a potential, and I am actually doing things. And there is a gap between what I am doing and what I am potentially able to do.
Mm-hmm.
That is a truth of every
Yes.
human being. And
Yes.
what we're trying to do under the heading of Respectonomics is using the currency of dignity, is trying to close the gap between what we do and what we're capable of doing, what we're actually
Mm-hmm.
doing, our activity, and our potential. Because when we don't do that, it's actually an exercise in self sabotage.
Yes. Agreed.
So let's get rid of the fear, get rid of the silos, give people a chance to talk with one another. And then I think that the true gems, the true jewels of a corporation and what it can bring to the table will be
Mm-hmm.
greatly, greatly amplified.
Absolutely. It would be amazing to switch out the word fear with excitement,
Absolutely.
right?
Excitement. I mean, I think Respectonomics is an interesting example in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that it is, in fact, an exciting project because it keeps changing and it takes on different. I mean, the word we use is organic, but it's
Right.
flexible and it changes with things around them.
Right.
And
Right.
it's able to do that. I'm asking then that the corporation will treat people with that same degree of enthusiasm and excitement. I remember I was at a big shareholders meeting, and can you imagine the fellow, the chap, the man? So I just want to be very clear on my sexuality here. He stands up in his three-piece pinstripe suit with a dark blue tie and a blue buttoneer handkerchief, whatever you call it, to match. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not exaggerating. His opening gambit was, and you have to follow my lips and follow the video on this one. We are so excited. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, if you're going to be excited, at least say yippee. Jump up and down. I mean, children do. Why shouldn't we?
Yes.
But seriously, there has to be that sense of humor, that sense of engagement, that sense of recognizing the other human being.
Has to feel genuine.
Hmm?
It
And
has to feel
exactly,
genuine.
exactly. And
Right?
if you're bored silly, then say I'm bored silly.
Yes.
You know, these,
I mean, and that same excitement has to come also, again, we talk about reciprocity.
yeah. Yes.
Like, right?
Yeah.
And so it not just has to come from the corporation,
Mm.
but it should ultimately come from the employee as well.
Yeah.
Again, but
Absolutely.
when those are exchanged equally and you've got a good flow and it's harmonious, that's an automated or an
Yeah.
automatic
Right.
outcome,
Well,
right?
I think the outcome we're looking for today is for corporations to recognize their giftedness, their true worth. I think
Absolutely.
we owe it to them to be able to bring it out on the table and say, what you have done is extremely worthwhile. We have some techniques that will allow you to enhance or to improve on what
Right.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Not least of which is recognizing another human being.
Yeah.
There can't be a higher calling than that.
Right. I think that's a great way to sum up what we wanted to articulate today.
But why don't we agree we rest our case?
We rest our case.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.